explain exactly what the title is about and how he's followed these adventures. Now give him a welcome, please.
Well, thank you, Handel. My first thoughts are that there's a runt to every litter, and it's nice to see everyone here today. I must apologise if there's some of the pictures are not as good as I would want, because a lot of these pictures were shot through windows of buses and aeroplanes and all sorts of things along the way. And it is a journey and it's a long journey to some of the most unusual and some of the wonders of the world that most people unfortunately don't get the chance to see. I say it's a long journey because the flying miles was about 18,000 there and back to Santiago in Chile via Miami, and the travelling miles on land was almost 2,000 miles as well. So you can see today we're going to do quite a long journey. I've been to South America 3 or 4 times, and the one thing that always strikes me is the Andes. The Andes is not such so high as the Himalayas, but they are 4,500 miles long, and they have a topography which is all their own, basically. It's a very soft, gentle, you can be 14,000, 15,000 feet up, whereas if you were in the Himalayas, or well, the Alps don't go that high, but a lot less in the Alps, it's rugged rock and stark and whatever. The Andes are quite different in so much that it's a very gentle contours, and they farmed an awful lot of them along the way, and there's good soil, etc. off there. And because I wasn't able to pinch a map off the internet of South America, I would ask you to visualize if a person standing on edge and you had x-ray eyes and you could see the spine and the shape. Everything in the front is to the west, which is Brazil mainly and whatever, and the little bit on the back end is Chile and Bolivia and Peru and whatever. So it's a real. The Andes actually split the continent in two, and there's very little on the one side, which dramatically affects the climate and the weather situation, and on the other side with the Amazonian and whatever. And I originally did call this talk when Dorothy asked what for a title. I said Walking Above the Clouds, because if you're in Peru and some of these places, I did the Inca Trail, you do walk every morning above the clouds. The clouds come up from the Amazon, and you're way above those clouds and whatever, and it's a really unusual sight. Unfortunately, there are no clouds where we're going today. They're very few and far between, and in some places it hasn't rained for 250 years, so it's a very dry and arid situation. So I'll make a start by asking you to focus on the screen now. One of the objectives was get to the Uyuni salt plain, and this is an immense area. It's totally flat, and in fact astronauts and NASA use it because there's only up to a meter deviation over such a large area. They use it for calibrating lots of scientific things and telescopes and whatever. Again, a lot of telescope observatories are in this area because of the clarity of the air, and the land mass itself, as you can see on the screen, is 20,000 square miles. Now Wales as a total is 40,000 square miles, so if you can think of everything under Aberaeron as being just one flat sheet of salt, that's the area that we go in. There is a little bit of difference because in the centre there is an island which we'll come to along the way. So, and the only other thing I should do before finishing my comments is to thank Martin Patton for providing some of the pictures here, which I don't think we would have had some pictures here today unless he'd helped. But he was nowhere to be seen 1:30 this morning when my printer decided not to work. But so bear with me, it's not as slick as I would have liked it, but anyway, we'll, well, I've got a thing off to press here, right. So I'll try and narrate it as we go through. This is my travelling companion from Belfast, John, and I met him on the Everest Base Trail, and we got very friendly, and we do one holiday a year so far. Taxiing out of Heathrow, I did really wish we were using that, but unfortunately it's just parked there. I've no idea what British Airways are going to do with it, but it's a bit forlorn all parked there when you're setting off on a long journey. You're thinking that really could sort of save me some time. Fortunately, the flights that we had, to Miami, it's about 8,000 miles, and unfortunately the way we went with American Airlines, there's quite a stopover. There was a 7-hour stopover on the way out and a 12-hour stopover on the way back. But anyway, it's time you can take some nice pictures. That's coming over the Caribbean, and I've only got, for anybody interested in cameras, just an ordinary point and shoot. There's no setting other than automatic for me, and that's eventually reaching Miami along the way there to it. And of course we had 5 hours there, and then we were back up in the air again, going south to Santiago in Chile. Santiago is quite a city, and you can see the Andes in the background there, and unfortunately, because it's such a big barrier, the whole landmass of 4,500 miles, it does alter the climates, and as you can see, it does create quite a bit of smog, and it can't be sort of taken away. Yes, it was 9 hours to get down to Santiago, and that was 4,300 miles. And the city itself was founded in 1541 by the conquistadors, and there's about 6.5 million people resident there. They have quite an advanced, I forget what they call it now. There's a system where it's electronic tag, so you go on the motorway, you don't stop, there's no toll barriers, you just get recorded for it. I know it's tag, I think, over this end of the world, but it's a very advanced system they've got there. And they're also, surprised to me, is they're quite world leaders in earthquakes, because they've had some very nasty earthquakes along the way, and they are very advanced in putting sort of shake-proof buildings together these days as well. So I always thought of Japan was the area, but apparently Chile's quite into it as well. We had to find a hotel on a marvellous address called Bernardo O'Higgins Avenue, which rather enthralled me, thinking about, well, where did Bernardo O'Higgins come from? But apparently it was a family in Ireland that can trace their roots back 1,000 years, and somebody up and left and married somebody in Spain at some stage or other, and around the 1500s, his father had him illegitimately, and but anyway, he was on hand some years later then to get involved in freeing Chile from Spain, and he's very, very well thought of. His name pops up all over the place, which I thought was quite a tickle. So from there, we didn't have much time in Santiago. We had an afternoon to walk around the place. Some of the observations were that the taxi from the airport was quite a tidy bloke. And when he stopped, he said, "Oh, I can't go down there, the police have blocked it off." So he went to this rather powerful looking woman and said, "Can I go down there?" She said, "No, on your bike." So we did 20, 30 yards, got to the next block, and the next thing she did, she came over and booked him, which was rather, we were trying to give him a tip for coming. He was getting booked for the privilege. And we were explained, in fact, that the police force unlike most police forces in the world, are in fact an arm of the defence force in Chile. So they've got an awful lot more authority than most police forces would have along the way. The following day we were down, we did have an afternoon around here. I particularly like this fact of South America, where they have these little vendors who just put an orange in their little machine and you get a nice drink of a crushed orange within a minute or two, and you know the cost is 20 pence or 30 pence or something or other. It's I was a bit amused with this ladies' retailer dresses or whatever. I think the changing room was round the back of it, but I'm not sure where. But they do see sort of a facet to retailing, which is that was just across the road from our hotel, and I must admit I didn't. Of course, Chile annexed Easter Island in 1888 or whenever it was, somewhere around there, and they govern Easter Island. But that's a modern take, I think, on one of the Mayo statues there. Then that evening, everybody, because on this type of holiday you don't know who you're going with till you get to the meat place, and this hotel on Bernardo O'Higgins Avenue these two young ladies are from Switzerland. They're both teachers in their late 20s, and they joined this fortnight's holiday. It's segmental holiday, so you can start down the south and go all the way to the top if you've got 6 months and the will to do all that. They were going on to Peru and the Inca Trail, and that was their holiday. So at the end of our holiday, they went on with the company to do further. This was a honeymoon couple, would you believe? Both from London. Well, no, she was from Hullway and he's from London, and I think they were trying to get back up north. But an excellent companions for and some of the sites we saw later. The team was also made up with Dan, who was on the left there. Was originally from Sydney, but he's been living in Vancouver for some years. And the guy on the right, Jerome, he's an import-export of vegetables and fruit in Rotterdam. It's quite a big job he's got, in so much that he speaks 5 languages and he tries to put 1 language on every year so that he can then manage another country, etc. So he's managing 5 countries at this point in time for his company. Christina, our guide, she was Peruvian and really was a great guide. And the young lady there, Claudia, she was on a gap year. She was 19, on a gap year, traveling solo, again with our group for 2 weeks. But then she was going down to the Amazon, and she had some strange booking up that she was going to see some witch doctors or shamans along the way, and was interested in hallucinogenic drugs. And apparently there's a very bad, you get very ill and you get all sorts of things which I didn't want to know about. I was surprised anybody wanted to know about personally. This was our first sight of the Pacific along the way, which isn't too far from. We're now heading north to a place called La Serena, and the first sight of the Pacific is always something that I feel pleased with. We got into, I think it was about 7 or 8 hours on these rather large luxury coaches they have there. La Serena, it's a seaside place. There's a bay of about, if I can get a picture of it, there's a bay of about 8 miles long, and the whole is a population of about 250,000 people. But we were in the old quarter, which was very picturesque in places, and it originally going back 100 to 2 years ago, their main business was exporting copper up to the western seaboard of the States, to Oregon in particular, and the ships used to come back in ballast with Oregon pine, and therefore a lot of the houses you can see where the building materials went, and they've got their own neo-colonial style now of architecture, which marries the adobe sort of local architecture into the Oregon pine, and it's very, very nice. Wish we could have that for Porthcawl, but again, very nice parks. Porthcawl's going to have a centre square before long, but I don't think there's any fountains planned for it. For people interested in dogs, is a very unusual situation in South America as a whole in general, in that nobody really keeps a dog. Dogs are there are plenty of dogs around the place, and the people the normal way is to feed them and to give them water, but not to possess them, not to own them, and don't have them in your house. So there's two photographs there. The top one, I got too near it, and obviously the guy in the front there was he thought of himself as the pack leader, because he certainly jumped up and down. So they're outside the front gate. These guys on the bottom there just lying around casual, whatever. But the dogs do go around in twos and threes, but they're not domestic pets. But people do look after their welfare. It's not that they dislike dogs. That's the accepted way of living. There's a very nice Japanese garden, and I thought, Japanese garden, well, that doesn't sound an awful lot, but this was a very big Japanese garden, and it had some very, very nice characteristics. It was built, I couldn't quite understand what the connection with Japan was, but it seemed to be some company or other that was participating in establishing this garden. Along the way, and John and I spent a good couple of hours walking around there. It was very, very nice, and in La Serena there's quite a small but good museum, and obviously what I was saying earlier, that these statues from Easter Island, this one was pinched or borrowed or whatever it was around the 1950s, and it's, if you see the next version, the more modern one in Santiago, it really doesn't give it credit. The original ones had eyes of oyster shells, so they had quite a reflective face on them as such. Not speaking Spanish, I couldn't understand too much of the history of this fella, but I thought he had a very imposing stance, which they've all got, and it was nice to see in some ways. There is a very large one in the British Museum in London as well, a larger one than that. Right, this is a picture from Easter Island, and it's from a sacred place. There's out of sight. There's a volcano over here, an extinct volcano. It's just a large bowl, and at this site here is where Easter Island went through a lot of cultural changes along its way, and as most people know, it imploded in its population and whatever, and they went over to this cult of the Birdman, and so the different tribes on the island decided that, well, hang on, I'd like to be the big chief, and the other tribes would say the same. So they adopted this idea that when the birds came, because the birds provided an awful lot of food and sustenance in the way of eggs and whatever, so each tribe would appoint a member to, when the birds arrived, to swim across to that island there, called Hopunui, I think it is, and return to the chiefs on the top at this sacred place. And the first guy back with an unbroken egg, his tribe then had the honour of leading all the tribes on Easter Island, and that sort of culture lasted for quite some time. But it like most native cultures, it just crashed when the white man came on the scene with various diseases and whatever. But these are petroglyphs, which there's quite a lot of work up there, because Jeanette and I have been to this spot and seen these petroglyphs, which are rock engravings as opposed to petrographs, is it, which is rock paintings and drawings, etc. So there is a subtle difference along the way. Right, going back to that gun, I just really feel I wanted to bring that back to Porthcawl. We should have a gun like that on the new harbour or something along the way. But there we are. So this is the type of bus that they really sort of got some really good coaches along the way. The bus stations are really all geared up for long distance transit. There aren't really much in the way of trains. The only trains that I could see were really from mining, for the mining industry, etc. Otherwise it's all road transport. And these buses and the system that they do, we're in the queue there to check the luggage in, and you see that flap at the rear of the bus. The driver is actually in that sort of cubby hole, and he gives you a receipt, and he places one on your bag, and you can't retrieve your bag unless you've got your receipt for him to know it's your bag. So it's well honed. And if you see on the bottom right here, the actual seats are very similar to sort of business class on airline standards. They are really, really good seats. It's well worth bus travel is clued up there. I've put this in really because the sand is not, as you'd expect, often like the Sahara Desert or whatever. It has various grades and colours along its way as you go along, and pass through many towns. And as you can see, the mining industry is quite a large influence in all these areas in that part of South America. We get at long last to this area here. San Pedro is classed as or known as one of the driest places in the world. This is where, and the areas outside here is where it hasn't rained for 250 years of recorded rainfall. It's not much of a village. It's very tourist orientated because it's really at the centre of crossroads of where you want to go in this part of the world. Everything's adobe built. It's all mud bricks along the way, and again, if you don't have any rain to wash it away, so they stand up as good as anything else. It's a couple of narrow streets, a very nice picturesque square, and not an awful lot more than that, unfortunately, but it does the job. Right, we had an orientation of the town itself. So our guide would show us around, and then you could do what you wished, whether you wanted a meal or whether you wanted to go shopping or have a little look around at all. But she orientated us with the layout of the town, because it does go dark quite quickly, and streetlights are not the thing for some of these places. So you need to have a feel of where you are, even if it is not a very large village. We had a trip in the afternoon to what's called the Valley of the Moon. Ooh, I'm going backwards, am I? And as the name suggests, it's quite an arid area, and it's quite the topography is very volcanic, and lots of interesting formations and whatever to see there. And NASA did try out some of their moon buggies many years ago before trying them out on the moon, because they thought it looked very similar. There's a road. You see this fellow here, he's just walking, and the road goes down, disappears through the cliff down there, and that's us in reverse coming up this way. to see it, and you have to be very careful with the sun. The sun is extremely strong there, and but otherwise it's other than being very hot, it's a nice place to be. These are some of the views from the top. That's the main road going down there. You can possibly see some traffic on it. Otherwise, it's heavy walking if you're actually on the landscape itself. A number of views, some very large sand. Strange how these sand dunes are up, because you look around and it's rock, and all of a sudden there's a huge sand dune there, and you think, how did that get there? But it's a similar view right the way around. There's a very large sand dune place there, and I thought, look at that on the side of the mountain. If it was snow, you could imagine it, but sand, and it's a huge wall of sand. That dimension there is very large. And the one we've just seen is this one on the side here, and then you just get all this rock. Well, it's a rock salt type mineral, actually, in the main, I'm told. And that's a little bit more of the same thing going there. And the other warning that we had was about going to these caves, and we were told that we must bring a flashlight or a head torch. So I thought made sure I put my head torch in, but when I got there, I was the only one who didn't have a head torch, which I later found in my camera bag, but when I needed it, I didn't find it. So, but you can see also this. I don't use this thing too well. This area here is this. If I'm looking at it right, it's this sort of. It's like a solidified rock, mud, and you have all these sorts of patterns on it, and it's very interesting. That I would like to have known more of that. So I used the flash off my camera really to help me along in as and when needed. And the others obviously helped as well, and but it did get a bit narrow and tight in places, and then we were able to find the way out, which was it's quite a rocky landscape, as you can see. You need a little bit of climbing agility, and particularly if you want to go around the tops. But the views are really worth it. This was an afternoon trip, and it was because it goes dusk very early. Part of it was to see at dusk the lighting, and the lighting effects are absolutely wonderful. This is the main road, I think, coming up through here, up the side of there, that mountain there, and these are extinct volcanoes. There's only one active volcano there. And obviously the climb, I mean, we get some really nice skies in over Rest Bayway, but there were some really nice ones here as well, and it was a different feel to the whole thing, that it was going dark, and yet the afterburn and the sunlight was very good. And eventually, when we got going in the bus, it ended up in a very powerful sky there, etc. As you can see, that's from the window of the curtain and the bus. The following day, because we had 2 days in San Pedro, and had a further look around, and it looks very nice. It reminds me a little bit of a safari type situation, but I can assure you the inside of the hut, which is what it was far better outside than inside. There wasn't any room to swing a cat. I had to keep my case under the wash-hand basin. That was the only room for it. And but I think there was a lot of renovating going on as well. So possibly you go back in a year or two, it would be much better. But it was that's John. I'm going to read outside there. That afternoon we we had a trip arranged to the Atacama salt pan lagoons, and we had something like a 6 or 8 mile drive over some very rough terrain, and I was very pleased to get there. But this pool, you could swim in this pool, and some people did, but it was very cold. So I chose to give a pass on that one, knowing that we had 2 others to go. And talking about the atmospheric situations, I didn't see that, but somebody did and said, "Give us your camera, Gary, we'll get you on that." And I think it was John. This was the second pool, and the salt was drying out on it, so we were told not to go in that. But it was very picturesque. You can see all the volcanoes around the back there, and you must remember all the time that this is very high up in the Andes. This is 14,000 feet up, and it's so flat because at one time, and where the difference between the Alps and the Himalayas and whatever is that this held, the Atacama as it's called, held a large lake, if not what you would think of as a sea. And most of it has disappeared over the millennium. But the Lake Titicaca, which is not far away, is probably something in the region of 25% of what originally the upland sea was. And of course the water has softened all the contours, which is what I was talking about earlier. That's some of the salt that was beginning to show and dry up. And the third lake, we were told, you've got to go in this lake because it's better it's more salty, it's more saline than the Dead Sea. So I've split that picture to get myself in on it there, but John and I, it's difficult to swim. It really is very difficult to turn and have the normal posture for swimming. You just want to be like a cork, and very strange. And we had a very nice little barbecue afterwards with pisco sours, which is the Peruvian drink, very popular there as well. But what you must remember is not to have too many of those and try and be in the water at the same time. Some nice reflections on some of the lake. Well, that was the lake because we walked all the way around here to get to this. This is the deeper end of the lake that we were on. In the evening, a couple of us decided to go on and see this chef. There was a team, two fellas, and they were going to show us how to make these pisco sours. And you can instead of citrus, you can have mango or whatever. They all taste very nice, and also do the empadas, which, if that's the right way of saying it, is like the local pasty. And we were all had our station around the table. We were given a piece of steak and a piece of this and some of that. We had to knead the dough and whatever. So it was really well done. And he emailed us the recipes afterwards. So it was very well done, and it was very, very reasonably priced. We all had a really good laugh, and it was a really good time. I was very pleased to put my name down for it as such, and there was plenty of wine as well floating around the place. So how they made a profit out of it, I have no idea. But apparently they want the blogs. This is what they wanted to register with the tourist board, etc. And so it was time to move on from La Serena and move further. To move now to up into the Andes itself, and where the border position is. Now, we were told that the border, you have to have a customs place before you can go to the border customs people, so you have to have your things stamped and whatever, and there's a lot of bureaucracy around the place over there. And so we were one of the first there. That's our little minibus. At 7:30, and they finally opened the window about 8:30. So we'd done about 1 mile in 1 hour, which yes, there was a lot of big lorries as well there along the way. But we eventually got our little stamp. We managed to get on the main highway for a little way, and as you can see, I'm not too sure if that's part of the Pan American Highway that comes down from Alaska to the south of South America, but it's a fairly newish road, so perhaps it's not, but we had to use it just a small way before heading up into the hills. And as you can see, there's some very impressive mountains along the way as well. So this is the border post. This is still the Chilean border post. From now on, everything is land cruisers because of the topography, etc. And this is no man's land. This is between the two posts, and we made the mistake of getting out to go and look at the lake, but it's one of those places where you soon get back in the car after about 30 seconds. You've decided you've had enough, and it was really, because as I say, you're so high up, and the wind, if there's wind around, it's very, very cutting. This is us now switching from the minibus to the 4x4 things, and as you can see, on every one of these vehicles you'll see some large plastic tanks, and those plastic containers, they're 125 litres each, so they got 250 litres there. The tank itself on the vehicle holds 90 litres, which they fill up at every opportunity. So I did work it out, I think how many gallons that was, but I can't remember off the top of my head. And this gives you some of the areas now, 14,500, 15,000 feet up. It's high and it's cold, but it's great country to look at. But you have to be prepared to stay with it. That's our two vehicles, these two here, getting into Bolivia. The Bolivians were much easier with the paperwork than the Chileans for some reason. And 5 or 10 minutes and we were in the country. This is one of the first lakes that we got to, and I did put a system that I knew which slide was where, but for some reason that's gone. So this is called Luanda Verde, the Green Lake. It's an amazing salt lake, has mineral suspension of arsenic, lead, sulfur, and other minerals, renders the colours of the turquoise to dark emerald depending on the sediment disturbance by the frequent high winds. The lake water, surprisingly, can go down to minus 56 degrees without and still remain fluid because of the chemical composition. So strange water that, and yet obviously all the local wildlife lives off these lakes. So yes, and I didn't know how it's quite a big lake to walk around. You'd want some time to walk around that lake. It was quite big. Then this is another part. You can see what I was talking about, the softness. You rarely see really exposed rock faces, and which you see so much in other mountain chains. This is a very nice, gentle sort of. There's no green, obviously, but it's very nice contours on this, and it's a bit like, I should imagine, flying. That these people just zoom past you this way or that way, leaving a big cloud of dust. They can be quite a way, because of the size of the areas, they can be a good way away from you. And all you're looking at is just this trail being like a jet in the sky or whatever, of these land cruisers going past you and whatever. The colours are really sort of show you up. And this I think was one of the toilet stops that we had to make. It's boys one side and girls the other side. It's as simple as that. And at the same time the guys check that the roof is on or whatever. So that's our party. And as you can see, we're all sort of kitted out for the weather, which you get there. Sola de Mana. All right, this is the hot area, right? Sola de Mana, in Spanish, morning sun. It's a 10-kilometer square geothermal field that is between 15,800 and 16,500 feet high, and so that's the thermal pool there, and the whole area has lots to see in this area. So it's a very nice little pool. Unfortunately, to take your kit off in such cold weather you need to grit your teeth a little bit. Once you're in there, it's fabulous. But I remember on a skiing holiday a couple of years ago, they had the bath, you know, the outside bath in the garden, the hot tub. That's right. But unfortunately, it was down the end, and there was about 3 feet of snow, which is all right going down because you can quickly get rid of your clothes that end. But to come back when you come up wet, that's not so easy. And it was the same a little bit in this area. You would quickly get your kit. There was a little change in hut, which you could store your clothes. But I think everybody took the opportunity of having quite a little dip there. But once you poke your head above it, it's quite cold. This is the hot area, which we went to, and it's always very interesting, these sort of Rotorua, is it, in New Zealand and whatever. Whereas in Rotorua there's set paths and you can't go there. There's a path determined for you. Here you could go anywhere you like, and if you wanted to fall in the mud pool, you just did that as well. There was no supervision. There was nothing laid out. You just went and wherever you went, where you wanted to. Whereas most of them are fairly easy to accommodate, and you know how close you can get to it if it's mud splattering up occasionally or whatever. There's one very large one. I think it must be that one up there, which I'll come to now. I thought, right, I'll go and take a picture of that, because it was making an awful noise, and I think that was as close as I got to it, because the noise was intense. The pressure where that steam was coming from, I don't know if anybody's been in industry and they've seen high pressure air, it is quite frightening, and that I thought, whoa, that's close enough. It's but very picturesque. A lot of people make the mistakes of calling the area geysers and whatever, and of course they're not. They're just steam vents and boiling mud and whatever in these pools. Several pools emitted this high pressure steam, and in the morning, I'm not too sure why in the morning, but in the morning apparently one or two of these you can go 500 feet in the air. So it's an awful lot of pressure to get that high. Right, Laguna Colorada is the next one. This is a red lagoon, and it has deposits of brilliant white sodium, magnesium, borax, gypsum, and is inhabited by a number of flamingos. Those are the flamingos. Not a very good picture, that one, but I think it was on fairly long range for my little point and shoot. But there was an awful lot of llamas around the place there, which there is a sort of safety range they'll allow you to get, but then they want to, like most animals, they want to move on then away from you. But But there was quite a lot, and this grass, this is a special type of grass that grows in this environment, and that's the food for the llamas and the alpacas and vicuñas and whatever. There's 4 types, and they specifically feed on that grass. They weren't too sure about my camera, I don't think. And then we checked in this high terrain. There's these, they don't call them hotels, they call them refuges, which is probably just about right. And they are fairly primitive, but they do give you a lot of shelter for the night. So it is an experience. I wouldn't have missed it. It looks from that picture as if they get some wind on the roof along the way there, and it's most of that is adobe built as well. And when we got there, we found that we were allocated 2 rooms for all of us. So it was a question that so that was me, that was John, and that was Dan. I think, and that was the honeymoon bed. So Vic and Olivia were in that one, and so it's all very cosy and snug, even if it's harsh outside. And it wasn't much better in the morning, in fact, when you got up, really, because it felt a bit like Scotland, the Antarctic, I must admit. But anyway, you can't expect to get 5 stars up there. And then this is leaving in the morning, all getting ready to go. We stopped at 2 of these places, and they both look very similar. Yes, for one vehicle, if everything is full in there, it amounts to 75 gallons that they've got on board. Yes, there we go. Right, those are a small herd of vicuñas, which they only live, if I remember rightly, from something like 12,000 to 16,000 feet. There's not too many animals that can run and escape predators at that sort of height, but these guys can. We then went on to this surprising place in the desert where there was all these rocks all of a sudden. No rhyme or reason at all in it. Some pretty shapes, but just sort of curious of how these rocks just suddenly arrived, or how they were there, particularly in the form that they had. It's a well-known tree. If you're looking at Bolivia, it's known as the rock tree, and unfortunately, I'm not a big believer in too many rules and regulations, but if you look on the blogs, that people are climbing all over it and whatever, it's really it's not going to last too long with thousands of people going over it. And I took that picture purely because I couldn't imagine being at Stonehenge and somebody painting on the thing, toilet with an arrow or whatever. But so the rock itself is not particularly, but the painting on it just sums up the whole area. You can see it's not a very large area around there, but there's some very nice rock shapes. Right. What puzzled me about this was how come you got no vegetation and then you get this stuff growing out of the rocks here? And it's a form of a special type of grass or whatever, and it's eaten by the local rodent. so the guide thought it was a good idea to go and try and find some. And it's about the size of a rabbit or thereabouts. It's got long ears and it's fairly furry and whatever. Bocaccia it's called. And apparently there's two types of bocaccias. One is the lowland and one is the highland. Slightly different colour. I think the other one's grey and this one's brown. And but it lives down more in the Chilean sort of lowlands more than up in the highlands here in Bolivia. And obviously I'm taking the picture, so I'm not up on the rocks there, but I thought, oh, let them go and find them. But nobody ever saw them, so I was quite pleased. But it feeds on this grassy stuff that grows out of the rocks there, and it's very dense. It's like a growth on a tree, but apparently it's called a grass. What I was talking about, seeing various trails and streaks and whatever, which is frequent, again through windows, etc. But so then we got to this further lake, which is this is one of 9 small saline lakes up in the Altiplano, and it reaches 13,500 feet, and it's got an area of 1.2 square miles. So it's a fair-sized lake. Again, there's going back to the flamingos. There's 3 types, I think, of unique flamingos. Not that I know anything about flamingos, but there are 3 types that breed up in these lakes, which, as I say, quite horrid. There's no human habitation, so llamas, wild llamas, and aren't many of those. Alpacas graze the area as well, with mineral deposits of gypsum, lithium, boron, and potassium, amongst others, being widely available. And funny creatures, aren't they? But, and this, we were having our sort of picnic lunch, and this little guy wandered down. I thought he was going to go for a drink. Bearing in mind it's the only water around anyway, so he obviously, this is a drinking hole. But anyway, I think there was too many of us for him to decide to have a drink. And he soon went on his way. But that's the only time one came fairly close. And so you can see it's well provided by, it's like a lake district, but different to our lake district. That's our second vehicle, which we were in. And then we get to the Salt Hotel. Well, I'm not too sure it's called the Salt Hotel, but there was salt on the floor anyway. These are definitely salt blocks, cut blocks of salt, which is the easy sort of material to build with. But what surprised me was the loose salt on the floor, and I just couldn't work how you vacuum cleaned the floor. Again, it really wasn't 5-star. But on the other hand, when you're hungry and whatever, there was our group and there was another group, French group, I think, over there, etc. Loading up again in the morning, which we had to get away early one morning. So we were having breakfast at 6:30 to get away, and then it was suddenly realised that they hadn't cooked the chicken, which was the lunch that we were going to have along the way. So it rather delayed things for an hour. Well, the chicken cooked. And of all the sites, I mean, when I was much younger, I did a lot of travelling, and you never knew what sort of person or traveller you were going to come up against. And this took me back a little bit, because this guy was on his bike. He was a French guy, and there he is there, and he was asking the way. I thought, all you need is a compass. There's no road signs, there's no roads, in fact. But anyway, he was asking our driver the way, and off he got back on his bike. And I thought, my gosh, surprising. So then we come to the Uyuni salt flats, and this is the area that I was describing earlier on. And, oh, there's my and with the heat haze, etc., you can see that you get some weird and wonderful shapes coming with it. And I'm not too sure if this is where we stopped to play games. And I was a bit surprised why we stopping here. And it was, you'll see now, the guide, Christina, thought it was great fun to have us all posing in different positions. And I've got quite a number of these, etc. And she obviously was quite talented at it, really, because I thought that was a great picture. And of course, everybody wanted the picture taken, so there had to be a series of 8 or 9 or 10 cameras to do the same picture. So it was quite a time-consuming situation, but she thought it was brilliant. So. And again, if you look up some of the blogs on this area, we were by no means the first people to do it. And the last game she played was, is there anybody here who can walk in a straight line? Of course, all the fellas thought we could. The girls thought they could as well. So then she blindfolded you and said, okay, walk to that rock. That was in line over there. And none of us could do it. It's surprising, you cannot walk in a straight line in total darkness. And everybody normally went to the right, but 1 or 2 went to the left. And you would virtually, if allowed, you would come back to the same place. We found it difficult to believe in the beginning, but she was proved right, and obviously done it lots of times before. And you start, you do probably the length of this room, you're okay, and then you start deviating along the way. Amazing. Now, then we come to this place. Inkawasi is the Inca name, because this area, as far as I should have said earlier, as far as Santiago in Chile, the Inca Empire came down from Peru all to this area, and so there is an Inca name for this, as well as more modern names like Cactus Island and Fish Island. The locals apparently call it Fish Island because it looks like a fish, but I've never seen it look like a fish, so perhaps it's a fish I don't know about. And you pull up and you can wander all over it, basically. You really have to be careful with these cactus because they're big bits of kit, and the needles are very sharp and very long. That's the satellite picture of it, and so this island is right in the middle there. So you can see they get up to about 12 meters high, and there's a walkway you can go up there, and it's a girl, because if there's multiple parts to it, apparently it's a female. If it's one trunk, it's a male. So I was reliably told. Yes, it's there's a cave there. That's the highest part of the island. There's a cave, which we walked up into, and then you had to walk down here, back down to the shore part there. And quite a lot of cactus in one place. And then we had lunch there, and off we went. The fascinating shape on these, which are either pentagons or hexagons or whatever, but apparently I tried to find out why this shape was on the surface of the salt, but apparently it's something to do. A shape is generated by the heat below in the cold water to the hot sun, and it generates this shape, normally 5 or 6 sided. So Then it was time to leave. That's not us, obviously, but somebody else leaving. But as we would do with our 2 cars. Again, you can see fascinating shapes. And then she wanted us to be one as well. So there we are. Games on the salt flats. And then more or less as we were leaving, because obviously we didn't cross, sort of go all around it, we just went to certain places. And the town where we were staying of Uyuni itself is coming up. But there was this statue there, which I thought was a good picture, because if you can see on that side, it says Dakar. And it's the Dakar Rally, which everybody locally was very pleased with, that we talked to, is there in January. Now this is a 2-week mad race all around South America. It starts at Buenos Aires, it comes up to this point, this is the turning point. They go around here and then they go back a different route, back to Argentina, etc. But they built that as a commemoration, and B as part of the rally course. Very fascinated I was with the ladies, the traditional ladies. Metuso is mixed marriages, basically, of indigenous natives and Spanish settlers, which obviously we wouldn't be surprised to know has been frowned upon for as second-rate over many centuries, really. And the story that I got was that the Spanish insisted that the local natives wore their type of skirts, and this dress sort of started in that. And the other bit, they don't cut their hair, so everybody is got this lovely thick black velvety hair, and as you can see how far it grows. We went to this, I don't know how to class it, a tourist salt place, or I don't know if he sells it in small quantities locally or whatever, but he's virtually doing everything himself, gathering the salt. And the most amazing thing, there's a bag there on the table if anybody wants to see it. He'd put a scoop in the bag, and then he had that little bottle gas there, which he'd run it over, and then with his fingers seal the top of it. Which I thought, wow, there we are, health and safety in Bolivia. He must have some hard skin to do that. I know the plastic's not very thick, but so that's how he sealed it. And the other thing which is very notable for Uyuni is the graveyard of steam engines. These steam engines a lot originated in the UK, but America as well. And when the mining industry collapsed in the late 40s, so did the railways. And so you have large bits of railway wheels hanging around the place, and loads of these old steam engines and whatever. And you can climb and go all over them, etc. And it's obviously a very picturesque place if you like taking pictures, and when you see how much the wheels have sunk into the base there. We went out for a meal that evening without the honeymoon couple. They insisted on having a table to the side of us as a romantic gesture to their honeymoon. So that's my chair there, so you can see how close we were. Uyuni itself, as I say, has really been, historically, it was 1890s, I think, founded as a trading post. That's a fairly old classical rail car, which is just outside the station. The station is where we are now, and I think it tells you the height of it and everything up there. It's got some weird and wonderful statues to the industry that it was involved with, and it's got that train which had this label on it of Leeds 1912. So that train's 100 years old, and it's stuck in as a dual carriageway in the middle of a sort of dual carriageway sort of thing. Our hotel was here, and these two vehicles were backup vehicles for some Dutch people. There was about 60 of them cycling the length of South America. And the significance of that is apparently Bolivia only had one war which they won. They've had a number of wars with Chile and various people, but they've only won the one, and that's because they used to have a seaport, but the Chileans pinched it off them at one time. We were up so early that morning, we went to the market, but people were just opening up. And as you can see, all the products look really, really appetizing, I thought. There's some lovely stuff there. Some nice pictures. I bought a little notebook off this young lady, and she was very pleased with the 7:30 purchase, I think. And this was my picnic, because when we go on the buses, they tell you, take a picnic if you go in. So if you're going for a 7-hour bus ride, so I had a couple of bananas and oranges off this young lady. And these were standing outside. As I say, I'm really pleased about this. A bit more about the skirts. The traditional one, they have 7 petticoats, and the 5th petticoat is quite a heavy woolen type petticoat. But they have woolen socks on, or stockings, and a variety of hats. The bowler there, which I brought back for a friend of mine and borrowed it back for today. A lot of ladies like the bowler, but there's quite a variety of hats. This was, as you can see, a very increase in our hotel quality. It was quite a nice hotel in Uyuni. And then we back up into the Andes. Again, I do this just to show you how you can live in such high mountains, really. It's very much subsistence living in some ways, unless this is a mining town that we're going to go down into. And then the Altiplano, where you can see where this original sea was, you can see it's so flat, just characteristics of water being around the place. We had one stop in 7 hours, and this was it. And doesn't really compare with the M4 services, but if you're hungry or thirsty, it'll do. And then we get to Potosi. Potosi I could go on all day about Potosi. It's a remarkable place, mainly because of this mountain. This is the silver mountain that all the Spanish wealth was created from. And so when you go back to 1600 and Raleigh, or whoever it was, Draco, was fighting these guys and pinching all their silver off their galleons. This is where it originated from. And the town of Potosi is quite big. It's about 100,000 people living there. And that mountain is, I've got it down here, but there's no lights here really to see what it was. But that mountain is like 100 meters lower than it originally was. And I think to myself, they've been burrowing into it for 400 years. What's the stability like? Because if it came down this way, it wouldn't be good news. By 1672, there was 68 churches built, and the city population had risen up to 200,000, and it was one of the largest and wealthiest cities in the world. And the mines are still working, because 8 o'clock in the morning you can hear the dynamite going off in there. I don't think they have quite the same systems that we have, but they just let the dynamite off and off you go. It supplied all the silver shipped through the Spanish Main in billets, in bullion bars of 25 pounds, and there was 45,000 tons of pure silver mined in 1556 to 1783, with 9,000 tons going to the Spanish monarchy. So they did well out of it. In 1608, the colonists asked Madrid to send 1,500 to 2,000 slaves per year, and a total of 30,000 African slaves were taken there during this era and forced to work A, in the mines, or B, in the mint. I'll come on to the mint now. The sign of wealth, because this was a very wealthy place at one time, was that you had your buildings with these verandas or whatever over the main street, so ladies could watch what was going on without going out into the rough place that presumably it was. And our hotel was just down that street there. And again, these ladies doing these little device she's got for peeling off the and giving you a drink and squashing it. It was for 20 pence. It was great. There was I was wondering, we went to see Monty Don the other night in the pavilion. I was wondering what he'd make of shipping his bananas around in wheelbarrows. But oh, this one here I thought was really funny, because I don't know if you can see, this is the bra display here, the preform bra display, and this is the knicker display. And I thought maybe a new branch of Ann Summers may be about to open in Potosi, but I don't know. But anyway, retailing, there we go. This is the Royal Mint, or was the Royal Mint. It's a museum now. And I had to take this picture because it was a really good painting exhibition. But this illustrated the indigenous Incas had this vision of a Mother Earth, Mama Pacha. And of course the Spanish go there with the Catholic religion and say, no, that's it. So you come out with a hybrid situation of Mama Pacha at the top, and of course she encompasses all the cardinals and the popes and everything else underneath us. So both were represented, and the pieces of 8 that we were all brought up on of excitement or whatever, there's a lot of glass bounce in there, but you can see the dies where they used to make them. I think it's 15 something on there, and these are the pieces of 8, and there was quite an exhibition of going in time of how they used to do them by hand at one stage, and just with a hammer and a die. And this is the silver ore as it's mined, but you need to crush it up and to melt it. And I wouldn't have wanted to be the guys on the crushing machine, because there's 2 crushing machines here, and what you did is you got a very big bloke and a long stout pole, and you put the ore underneath it and you rolled it back and forth until it crushed the ore. And I thought, God, I wouldn't want that job. And then, unfortunately, some of these Africans were obviously put in this. There's a guy on the back on the bellows, and there's a guy there with, this is the ladle bit, pushing it out into some mould here, and so that it becomes molten, and now you're putting it into a bullion bar. But to make coins out of it, you can't make a coin out of a bullion bar, so you need to have a system, and of course there's no electricity in those days, so they had mules. But unfortunately the mules only lasted about 6 or 8 weeks before they upped and died, so a lot of these African slaves were put into to supplement the mules. But this was the power to the upstairs, where you had a thinning device where the bar was heated up, and it was gradually reduced and reduced until it came into a sheet of silver, basically. And this is the end product of, there was quite a display of some wonderful silver there, and yes, very desirable, some of these pieces. We were having a meal in there, and it was election time, and I thought, my God, World War III started. But it wasn't. It was the locals out and about. There was a huge band following them there. They had fireworks and bangers and making just a heck of a din. I don't know what politicians in this country would think of that. And of course there's a lot of attention paid to the church there as well. We were due for our next bus ride, and I put this in because it's a very modern bus terminus, but you go inside there and you cannot believe the din. There's hardly anybody there, but these ladies are paid to yell that there's a bus going to San Pedro or wherever at 10:30, and it's like a chant. It's I couldn't make it out at all, but it certainly is ear splitting. This is one of the local dress chichillas, and there's the famous hat on the top there. She's getting on the bus with us, and there's such an interesting story about the dress of these people, which I wish I had time to go into more. The younger generation obviously are a bit more into sprayed-on jeans and more modern things, but and this young lady came on the bus selling some drinks. I thought, oh, is she going to go all the way? Because we're going to be on this bus now for 19 hours or something. And anyway, no, she had they have a funny way of, you can reserve your ticket in the terminal, but you pay more. If you pay for it on the street, 50 yards outside is cheaper, but you take your chance that the bus is not full, obviously. Again, farming, I suppose, llama along the way there. Obviously, the certain villages are quite poor. Interesting building techniques, I thought, along the way. They have obviously had a bit of shuttering up there and then poured the concrete in, and then they needed to keep it up, so they have this mechanism of support poles. And again, it's, as you can see, it's not a very wealthy place. Now this place, I've been to two what's called fake towns. There's one in Peru, where you can get any garment made with any name you wish on it, as whatever, in a sort of in town like this. Now this is outside La Paz, and it's a capital for fake car parts. So whatever car you've got in the world and you want something for it, they'll make it here for you and come back this afternoon and it'll be ready. The stories we heard are amazing on some of these places. Most surprising, I've pinched this one off the internet because my picture from the bus, I was so surprised to find Che Guevara, because Che Guevara was shot by the Bolivians, if you remember, back in 67 or 8 or 9. And he was cornered in the jungle, and they captured him for 2 days, and the president or whoever it was said, no, no, we don't want him back here, so they shot him. And there's this big statue to him, which was, apparently it's 6 ton in weight, and they like this business of making it up out of all spare parts and bits of chains and gears and all sorts of old bits of rubbish. But Che Guevara in La Paz. There we are, surprising. Anyway, that's La Paz. La Paz is the most unusual place I've ever seen in my life. It's like a big canyon that's just filled with houses, and you can go right to the top there on both sides, so it's like a big bathtub, and there's 2,000 feet difference between the bottom end of it and the top end up there. And they've even got cable cars. They're installing something like 6 cable car runs, like Alpine Resorts, as a mass transit type thing. And it's 10 degrees. It can average 10 degrees from the top of La Paz to the bottom of La Paz on the same day. So most unusual in that way. This is the bus terminus, and little kids going to school coming off the bus, which I thought was a nice shot. That's us with a guide with my bag. These are street vendors. You can see the slope of the place. It is extremely hilly, and some of the young local ladies out shopping. They have, I don't know, is it for the benefits of tourists, but they have some grisly bits of pieces for sale if you look at all these dried and whatever pieces of animals. This couple was outside our hotel selling coca leaves and bits and pieces of herbs, presumably. The old fellow was drinking some tea there, and the hotel provides you with chocolate, tea, coffee or cocoa. So when you think of the problems we get with drugs over here, and yet, as I say, everybody's chewing these things or drinking the leaves or whatever. High Street. Now, I've never been really much into a fan of traffic lights, but I'm really sold on traffic lights after my visit to La Paz, because everything is on the grid system and nobody gives way. So how the hell they move around the place, I have no idea, because they just cross over. I mean, there's been recently about the checkers things in Cardiff, but So this is a very a sort of local mass transit thing as well. There's loads of these sort of vehicles around the place. And that's the end of the local fruit market, very colourful. This is So Long Time, this is Bye Bye. These girls were leaving before John and I, only a couple of hours, but they were leaving to go to Peru. That's coming back to Miami, flying into Miami. We had a day in Miami. We were on the beach by 7 o'clock in the morning. And very nice water it was. And that amounts to just about, sums it up, John's face. It's over. So that's 30 miles away from the airport, because we had a $5 Rover ticket where we could go anywhere for the day. And one little, I don't know if anybody's been to South America and then come back via the States, because when I picked my case up at Heathrow, because I hadn't seen it for 2 days, I thought something strange with that, the belt's missing on it. And then I thought the lock's missing on it. So AA and American Airlines and BA are partners. So there was a Destiny buyer. I said, hey, I think somebody's tampered with my case. And the guy said, you haven't flown in on the Miami flight, have you? I said, yes. Oh, he said, your strap and your lock and your card explaining it will be inside your case. And I thought, I've never heard so much rubbish in my life. I said, look, will you stay here while I go? And I opened the case, and the biggest surprise of my life, the card from the drug agency was in there, the lock was in there, the belt and the piece they'd cut off to get into the case. And because we were coming from Bolivia, and cocaine is not obviously welcomed in the States, they just checked my case out, and you have to have a special little lock that they can open if you're not going to get it cut open. If you go to Miami and back to the UK, it doesn't occur, but if you go via the States from South America, or probably other places in the world, that's what's possibly liable to happen. Anyway, thank you for your attention. I hope you've enjoyed some of the pictures, and you've got an idea of Bolivia and Chile maybe along the way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary. I did predict that we were in for a very fascinating afternoon, and I did say that we would have a skilled, well-illustrated talk, and we've had just that. Now, if there are any questions for Gary, or if anybody would like to make a comment on the talk, you are now free to do so. Any questions?
How long, Gary, did it take you? How long were you away for?
Just over 2 weeks. I mean, it's regarded as 2 weeks, but it's an extra day, 16 days, so that's Saturday, but yeah.
Where did all the fruit grow?
Where did all the fruit grow?
Where did they grow?
To be quite honest, I wasn't there long enough to find out, but I'm sure a lot of it is local, but it's obviously in areas which I wasn't going to, yeah.
Gary, the place that had no rain, did they have water shoots coming up from underground, or how else did they survive?
They do pipe water in apparently from some glaciers up in the mountains in the Andes, which is just a stone's throw away. But it is becoming fairly unreliable, was what I was told. So I don't know if it's like London with with a well underneath it or what. But, yes, Handel.
What sort of seasons were there in the area where you are? Do you know 4 seasons like we have?
I really didn't know that.
Some years didn't have rain for whatever years.
It was very static the 2 weeks I was there.
Yeah. I don't think there's much change actually.
No, I don't think so
I don't
either.
think so.
I didn't look at the climate charts. It's
Who was that down there?
I'm sorry.
It was a wonderful journey, actually, but what was the highlight? Can you give a highlight?
Well, the the salt plain itself, with that image of a desert, only it's salt rather than sand, and you can see nothing at all, and you're driving across it, I think that would probably be one of the major things that I accomplished on that trip. And you know, it's so few people know about it, and it's so extraordinarily large as a natural wonder. I'm ever so pleased that I went there. Yeah.
I'm not surprised, guys, seeing what outside toilets were.
Actually, that salt is not that thick, because there are places where they've got like Eskimo holes, so they put your hand down, and there's a crystal piece of salt there from the plain salt. They keep it open, obviously, because they stop there for tourists and whatever. But you put your hand down in the water, and it's not that thick. So I don't know. As far as I know, no Land Cruisers have disappeared. But
I was going to say, do they die out there? Because they don't seem to worry about their weight.
Under the surface, I'm sure life is quite difficult.
Right, 2 more questions or comments.
Did you suffer from altitude sickness at all?
Funny enough, I did, yes. I had a morning, but a couple of us had quite heavy head colds and whatever. But San Pedro, which is not particularly high, yes, I felt a morning where I was really dizzy and not feeling too good about things. But,
Not because the high country, you say?
yes, I mean, you work your way up. The first holiday we were offered was to go to La Paz and work our way backwards from the trip we down. And there's no way I would do that, because you land at 14,500 feet and you get out of a pressurized airplane at 14,500 feet. And I would say most people get off to 6. You know, within half an hour you're feeling, what's happening to me?